Hello, everyone. Laura here again. Welcome to the November edition of Jumpstart's Facebook Live. As you might remember, our financial literacy principle for November is about understanding investing. And I'm so excited about our special guest today, who just has a wealth of information to share with us in a very unique perspective. And so I can't wait to get to that. But before we do, I just need to take a moment to thank everyone who made our 2018 Jumpstart National Educator Conference such a tremendous success. We brought 330 teachers from 48 states and the District of Columbia to Cleveland last week, and it was great to see a lot of you again, great to meet a lot of you for the first time. It was a very special conference for us because it was our 10th anniversary, and we set a goal to completely eliminate teacher registration this year. And our partners stepped up in a huge way and helped us meet the goal so that none of the teachers paid a registration fee to join us. And we cannot thank you enough, all of our partners and everyone who supported it. Thank you so much for making it a success. One of our partners, who was a sponsor of the conference again this year, is a longtime Jumpstart Coalition partner, the Charles Schwab Foundation. See, I was going someplace with this, and it's a special pleasure to welcome the board chair and president of the Charles Schwab Foundation, who is also an old friend and also the 2011 recipient of our William E. Odom Visionary Leadership Award. It is my pleasure to welcome Carrie Schwab-Pomerantz. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you, Laura. Always fun to be working side by side with you.
Oh, well, thank you, and likewise. And it's funny, I actually haven't seen you in a while, so we get to communicate here online. It's sort of fun, and this is what we do here with Facebook Live. We hope that this is just our chance to catch up and talk about investing, and several hundred of our closest friends will be listening in.
Hello, friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, anyone just joining us, welcome. And also welcome to those of you who are viewing the archived version of this program. So I hope you will stick with us. So today we're talking about investing and within the broader context of financial management. And today, as a result of a recent survey that the Schwab Foundation did, we're going to look at it through the lens of gender equality, or perhaps gender inequality, as the case may be. And so I think where we'd like to start is to welcome Carrie and have her tell us a little bit about that survey.
Yeah, this is something I'm pretty passionate about, Laura. We just conducted at Charles Schwab a survey among several thousand young people from 16 to 25 years old. These are people who are just, out of the gate or just starting to go out of the gate on, for financial independence. And I think that the headline is that girls, these young women, show total grit when it comes to their finances, but unfortunately, they're already falling behind in saving and investing, which shows a gender disparity, right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So let me just kind of share with you, because I think the audience, especially those of us who have young women in our lives, will appreciate and we can learn from it. But what we found is that young women do want to be financially independent, more so than their male counterparts, from totally independent from their parents. They also see financial planning as really critical to their success. So their attitudes are in the right place. But let me share also their behaviors are also I think totally in the right place. So one is that they spend 30% less than young men. 30%. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're more likely to have a second job to make ends meet, and they're more likely to pass on spending to save. So doesn't that sound like, oh, they're headed for total financial independence?
Yep.
Wrong.
Yeah.
What this survey showed is that young men have 40% more savings than women. So, what is going on there, right? And I'll share some from the survey what we sort of learned, and also just from bringing in some other surveys as well to kind of come to some conclusions. The first is, and we know that it's society and it's society and its parents. I mean, it starts right at home, where allowances are a lot less for young women than men. Okay, we're talking differently to our daughters than our sons. When we talk to our daughters, we talk about, I'll call them the sort of the short term financial matters, such as savings and budgeting, which are important, and household management, all important. But with the boys, we're talking about long-term wealth building. So we're not only talking about borrowing, but we're talking about investing. So the conversation right off the bat is not doing our young women justice. And then lastly, here's the one in particular, given the focus of today's call around investing. Half of young women versus boys have investment accounts. So twice as many boys as girls have investment accounts. The same for if we asked them, if you were given some extra cash, would you invest? And twice as many young men said yes versus girls. And then when we asked them about the importance of investing to reaching their financial goals, far more young men said that was important, investing was important, than girls. So you can see that there's a lot of things getting in the way of young women achieving the goals and the financial security that we want for everybody.
Yeah, I don't have a daughter, so I can't check myself on this one. But I do have a brother, and this unfortunately doesn't surprise me. And I think that maybe for a lot of our audience, and again, welcome to anyone who's just joining us. We are here talking about investing with Carrie Schwab-Pomerantz. I bet a lot of people would say that they don't consciously do that. A lot of us
definitely a lot of unconscious bias going on.
Yeah, and so
it's hard to get over them.
Really, it is. So what do we do about that?
Well, I mean, there's so much we can do, but a lot of these problems, as I kind of already showed, it starts at home. So we've got to sort of think about what can we do with not just our daughters, but our nieces and nephews too, by the way, and sons. The first is to talk to the boys and the girls the same. We've got to include investing in the conversation for young women. And I know there's this myth that investing is not like gambling, but it's risky. But what I think we need to get the message out is that it's just as risky to be in cash, or bonds. And so those are the kind of concepts that we have to talk about. I also think we need to start paying the young, women, or the young women, at least in our household, the same allowance. Let's make sure that they're being paid for, equally with whatever's behind it, whether it's chores or other responsibilities, that they're equally paid. I also think it's really important for us to start teaching the young women in our lives how to advocate for themselves and actually negotiate salaries. That's something actually I'm really involved with in San Francisco as a commissioner on the status of women. I think it starts with equal pay, and then lastly, it's just know that financial literacy, and I know you believe this, is a lifelong pursuit. It's not a one point in time education. It's a lifelong educational process, even for those of us who are pros.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that first of all, thank you for including us in your Day of the Girl. I think that was really important to make sure that all of us who are professionals and who are women are speaking to the next generation of girls so that they're hearing this message in a different perspective.
Yeah, and another thing I didn't really point out, I think in some ways we might have to have more of a tough love conversation with the young women in our lives. It's unfortunate, but the likelihood is when they do go out in the workforce, they're going to be paid 80 cents on the dollar versus, their male counterpart. They're more likely to go in and out of the workforce to care for, a child or an elderly parent. So they lose out on savings, right? And they tend to live longer. So we do, as women do have unique circumstances, which means that we have to even be more disciplined about our money, and we have to start as soon, as early as possible.
Well, I was really encouraged from your study to see the attitude of young women and girls, that seemed to be a great starting point, even though there is a gap to fill. Attitude is a good start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it means their hearts and their minds are in it. They want to learn. And just even from prior studies, young people really want to learn about money. I mean, come on, like, who doesn't want to, make money, right?
But I think the learning part is so important, and you do so much to help spread this message. And I just want to say to all of the viewers that we are going to put a link both to your survey, and also for those of you, I introduced Carrie rather briefly. We'll have a link to your bio and to the work that the foundation does, so that our viewers can learn more about you, about the foundation, and about this survey, as well as other things. Carrie, a lot of our viewers are educators, and what can they do? And it's sort of like we're talking to parents, but what are some of the things that teachers can do in helping girls close that gap?
Yeah. Well, let me just say, first of all, to the teachers on the call, thank you to all of you for your commitment to financial literacy. Laura and I were on the President's Advisory Council under President Bush and then President Obama. And I know we both are deeply passionate that we think if we could, be king of the day, we would have financial literacy mandated in every school in America. But unfortunately, that's not happening. It's I think, what is it, 17 states require it to at least be embedded. I think 5 states require it as a individual. Yeah, and I think that's great, but we have so much more work to do. So I think for teachers, if you're on this call, you're obviously already bought in, and just know that you're making such a big difference in these young people's lives. To me, it's about creating financial security and social mobility. But I also wanted to mention that we have a national partnership with DonorsChoose.org. And I'm sure everybody on this call knows who they are. And what we are doing is we're paying for half of every financial literacy project that's requested by teachers. And not only that, we're also paying for teacher professional development and financial literacy. So while Jumpstart, I know, already provides it for free, and sometimes a teacher may not be able to do that, but if you can find local resources, we will contribute to that too. So please, use our resources so you can get the job done for your kids.
Absolutely. And thank you. And our teachers are so grateful. The thing about working with, teachers just in general are wonderful, but especially the personal finance teachers that we've met over the years and we work with are really just a special breed and really appreciate the support. So Heather will make sure that there is a link down below so that any of you who want to know more about what the Charles Schwab Foundation is doing to support through Donors Choose, there'll be an easy link right here that you can find.
Yeah, or if you don't mind if I just interrupt,
please.
This whole notion of financial literacy, we live in a world of doing it ourselves, right? There is no one helping us anymore. Our retirement is all incumbent on us. We have to save and invest, know how to invest, and yet we don't really have all the resources to do that. And I know you agree with this, but we need parents to be involved. We need schools and teachers to be involved. We need the workplace to be involved, nonprofits, all of us, so we can, change sort of the trajectory of this, what I would call it a crisis of lack of financial security in this country.
Yeah, and sometimes we talk about that it is not that we as consumers have become less financially literate, but rather it's become a much more complicated and sophisticated financial world. As you mentioned, more financial decisions are self-directed. There's also more to choose from. There's more to know about. And so I think it's more important than ever before for young people and especially girls who I think maybe in the past didn't have that exposure to making these kinds of decisions. It's so important to know enough that you can make smart decisions.
We all need to come together.
We do. And I think that, one of the exciting things is how the industry has supported what educators do and what families do. And so, again, I just want to mention that we appreciate what the Charles Schwab Foundation has done with Jumpstart, but also directly with teachers, with families, and with everybody else. We have a really diverse audience. I think that one of the things is we did, Heather, let me just ask you, do we have any, we don't have any questions. We're going to address questions after the fact. Okay, so I wanted just to mention that we did have some requests, and we are going to address some questions after the broadcast so that they're there for everyone to see. But Carrie, I want to just go back to the gender survey a little bit, and and talk about boys. How should we be talking to boys, in addition to how we talk to our young girls, not only to them as consumers, but to them as sons and husbands and boyfriends and and parents of young girls, to help balance this? How should the conversation go?
Well, I mean, so today the survey is about girls, but the bottom line is that we need both the men and the women, or young men and women, to get started. It's so critical that they start to learn to live within their means. Budgeting is so critical, and as you know, I think 50% of Americans cannot come up with a $400 emergency fund without selling something or borrowing. So how do we get everybody putting a little bit of money or less, living below their means is the first one. And the other is as they start going into the workforce, many will have a 401k with a company match. We always tell everybody to save and invest up to the company match. Otherwise, you're walking away from free money. And those who do not have access to a 401k, definitely open up a Roth IRA and start to save and invest. And again, it's not how much money you have to save, it's how much time. So a young person would say, if you're in your 20s, save 10%, 15% would be better. And for the rest of your life, you'll have a comfortable retirement. If you wait until your 30s, then it gets up to 20%. If you wait till your 40s, it's 30%. So it's all about starting early. So it's so much easier.
Right. If it's a smaller percentage, if you start sooner, you make that up faster than if you save a larger percentage, but you start later.
Right. And the math teachers on the call, they all know about the power of compound growth. So it's a miracle.
Yeah. Wow. Imagine that. No, it is. And sometimes though, I think that this type of conversation is good, not because we're saying something that is entirely new to this audience, but it is the reinforcement, and that we're talking about it, and that we still need to talk about it. And some of us who have been doing this work for a while, it's still a good reminder. And then not only as, as professionals, but as parents and as educators, that we continue to have this conversation with our own kids.
Yes. And by the way, I just want to, I point this out all the time. There's no shame in getting help also from a professional. I tell people obviously I've been in the business for all my career, and I get help from a professional. So we all could use a little help.
I do as well. And I know you started your career in personal finance as a teenager, I think. So,
yes. I worked for Schwab as a teenager.
We have a lot to learn from you. I think that the other thing, that I just wanted to go back to in terms of starting early. Do you have any advice, and especially for girls who seem to need a little bit more of a push? How do young people get started? What's your best advice for that?
It's hard for me to point. My compliance department would get mad at me, but right. I'm gonna stick my neck out a little bit. I with my own kids, when they were about 12, 13 years old, I made them come into the Schwab office. Doesn't have to be Schwab. And get comfortable with working with a financial institution. I think that's sort of the biggest thing that we need to do. I think I've kind of lost what your question was.
No, well, it was about getting people started.
Oh, and yes. And and I do that with each of my kids, getting to know a financial consultant and letting them make recommendations. But I help young people all the time. And my dad said to me when I was 23 years old and I was investing in my IRA, He said, just pick 2 mutual funds and, any 2 equity funds. And I remember being irritated because I thought for sure he'd give me the hot stock or, but, many years looking back, he was absolutely right. It's not about picking the hot stock. It's about participating in the market in a diversified portfolio. I love ETFs, that mirror the market, like the S&P 500 or the Russell 3000 for young people to start getting started. And of course, there's all the robo products as well. But ETFs are a really nice, simple way to participate in lots of companies with not a lot of money at a low cost.
And is a good way for maybe a newer investor to get
Absolutely. And of course, it's for money that you're not going to need for at least 5 years, right? Because the markets do go up and down, and investing is really a long-term endeavor. And that's what takes the risk out of it.
And so, I hope you don't mind, but I am assuming that our audience knows this, but in case they don't, that Carrie's father happens to have his name on the company. His name is on the company. And so, so really nice to hear that kind of advice from him. I think that also I just wanted to mention that, we talk about financial literacy. This is a couple of things that you said that are really important to what we talk about. One is that financial literacy doesn't always mean knowing everything yourself. We're not trying to turn everyone into an expert. We're trying to give consumers enough information that they know when they need to get help. And so Absolutely. I think that was so important to point out that in our pursuit of knowing more about finance, there still is, it is still very worthwhile to get help. And even if you're an expert, sometimes somebody else's perspective, even if you know more than the person advising you, someone else's perspective really helps to center us when we're consumers ourselves. And so I think that's really good advice. And I think the other thing that you said that was really important is that, you talked about bringing your kids into the financial office and you said not Schwab, perhaps for your kids.
Yeah, not all kids.
But coming into a financial institution today, I think, is more important than ever before because we live in an electronic world and young people today don't see transactions in the same way we did when we were growing up. And so bringing them into a financial institution, I think, really does go a long way in helping them see the scope and understand the financial services.
Totally agree. And just taking that mystery out of it.
Yeah. Exactly. So let me just ask you, anything else that you'd like to share with we have wonderful viewers, and for those of you who are just joining us, thank you, or if you're joining us watching this after we're live. Carrie, anything else you'd like to share with our folks?
Again, thank you so much. I think everybody on this call sounds like they're an expert. I guess my one advice or plea is that let's talk more about investing. I think that's where people get sort of stopped up a little bit because it does feel complex and overwhelming, and it does feel like gambling and this and that, but it really doesn't have to be that. Again, it can be as simple as participating in some asset allocation fund, or an ETF fund. I think that's as adults, if we could demystify and make investing more accessible, we're going to create a lot more financially secure folks.
Right.
In this country. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you. And I think that conversations, one of the reasons we do this is the more we talk about it, we hope that more people have a better comfort level and it just becomes part of the conversation. And so we appreciate you doing this with us, and thank you very much. And we appreciate you being here. And I'm sure that there will be comments and questions below. But once again, for everyone who's joining us, we will have links right down below to the Charles Schwab Foundation, to the survey, and information that Carrie mentioned, also to Donors Choose. So do look below for those links. And I just want to say thank you for everyone. Don't forget to join us Tuesday, December 11th. I had to look, I couldn't remember. Tuesday, December 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern for our next edition of Facebook Live. And so in the meantime, I want to wish you and yours a very happy Thanksgiving, and to our Jewish friends a very happy Hanukkah, because Hanukkah comes up early this year and it'll be before our next show. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to your team at Schwab for wonderful support for our educators.
And Laura, also thank you to you and Jumpstart and all that you do for all of us, gathering all of us who care about this topic and making us better and stronger.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it, and the team appreciates it too. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in December.